All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the launch of Soulmates and Strangers by Judith Umlas. We are here virtually from the Palisades Free Library in Palisades, New York. I'm Emily Neville. I'm the Adult Services Librarian, and I'll be hosting tonight's program. So our guest of honor tonight is Judith Umlas. Judy is the Senior Vice President, as well as the author and trainer at International Institute for Learning, which is a global corporate training company. She wrote the groundbreaking book, The Power of Acknowledgement, back in 2006. Following that, she wrote Grateful Leadership and You're Totally Awesome, The Power of Acknowledgement for Kids. And tonight we are here to celebrate the launch of Judy's fourth book, Soulmates and Strangers, published by her very own company, Handler and Wagreich, which is a personal memoir about the legacy left to her, as well as all of us, by her mother and French pen pal of over 70 years. Judy, your book describes a series of letters that were written by your mother, Sylvia Handler Wagreich, and her French pen pal, Claudia Raymond Bouillard Mariotti, encompassing the years 1936 to 1947. Can you tell us a little bit about Sylvia and Claudia and how you came to have their letters?
Well, I think what I'll do is I'll show a few of the images from the book and we'll kind of tell the story a little bit. But first, I want to just welcome all the wonderful people who are here. I don't know every single one of you, but those who are here are drawn by a story of love and legacy and magic. And I have to warn you that I get very moved when I talk about this book. So you know, it will happen, but I'm going to share my screen and I will tell you the story based on that. Just makes it a little bit easier. So this is the beautiful cover, by the way, designed by Renee Avery Boyd, who is here. She's done an amazing job with that. And every time I look at it, I feel very moved because my mother is on the left and her French pen pal is on the right. And these were soulmates. They became soulmates over the years, but they were absolute strangers when they first met. Oops, I'm having a little trouble advancing the slide. Oh, sorry. I don't know what the problem is. There we go. Okay, so here you can see them a little bit older than they are on the, well, my mother's a little older and Claudia is probably in her younger years there. But the interior of the book, and these images are taken from the interior, were designed by the very talented Maria Scharf, who has put her heart and soul into this book. I think everybody who worked on it has their heart and soul in it. And I am so honored that that is the case. So this started in one classroom, as you may have gotten a sense of from the little video. One classroom in the Bronx, a French teacher asked, who would like a pen pal? Raise your hand. And my mother, Sylvia Handler Wagreich, was the only one in the class who raised her hand. Well, in Lyon, France, the English teacher asked who would like a pen pal. And Claudia was the only one who raised her hand. So they were meant to be. And they spent years trying to match friends and classmates with other friends and classmates in the Bronx and in Lyon, France. And they never stuck, they never took. But Sylvia and Claudia took, they lasted. They wrote letters until they were into their 80s. It was an amazing, amazing connection. So here's an image of the first letter dated February, whatever that is, February 3rd, 1936. And the last letter is in March of 1947. And I have them all. I have the little beautiful lace envelope that I received the letters in. And you'll hear about that in just a little bit. And I have all the letters in those years. It's just an amazing legacy. And during that period of 1936 to 1947, my parents, Sylvia and Paul, gorgeous couple that they were, united in marriage in 1944, and they began their lives together. So that was within the context. And also there was just happened to be a world war that kept Sylvia and Claudia apart for 5 years. Their letters piled up, in each other's mailboxes or wherever they ended up. And for 5 years, they didn't hear from each other. And finally they did. And I have the letter after the war, and they were so thrilled to be connected again. And you have to understand, this book is based solely on my mother's letters. Now, that's because Claudia saved them from that period of time. And she said that she had saved every letter, but she didn't know what she did with the others. But these she had saved and put in this lace envelope. And my mother, I know, had those letters, but I have not found them. They're not in the stacks of papers. They may turn up one day. I still have a couple of boxes full of papers to go through, so you never know. The letters went through the starting of my father's dental office in 1946. And that was a very exciting time for him and for our family. And my son, Jared, who's here today. Hi, Jared. This is Jared's Dieffenbachia plant, which is the great grandchild of the original gift my father received from his very first patient, a Dieffenbachia plant. And now my brother, we call him the Dieffenbachia dealer because he makes cuttings for every member of our family. Has a cutting that has grown. Jared's plants, as you can see, have practically hit the ceiling, and mine's getting there. So they just keep going on and on like this legacy. And then we get to the part, I love the sign, construction ahead. My mother here is pregnant with me. And there's a very interesting part of the book, which we will talk about later. Emily, I know, has a question about it. My mother didn't ever mention to her pen pal that she was pregnant, even though she was 6 months pregnant in the last letter by my calculation. So it's a bit of a mystery, a little bit of a cliffhanger. And then there's the evidence. That was me, and I was living in that period. This is the early ones, the baby ones are me in 1947, and that's when the letters ended that Claudia had. Then in 1965, my mother asked me, between my high school graduation and start of college, would I like to live with her French pen pal, because the letters came all the time with gifts every Christmas, every big holiday. And I brought a pair of my hand knit socks. They're my security socks, knit by Claudia, because she would make something for every member of the family. So we knew of her, and I loved the French language incredibly. And so my mother said, you want to go live with Claudia for the summer? I've asked her, and she said they'd love to have an American daughter. They had no children, Claudia and her husband, Mario. But I went, and it was the best summer of my life. And you could see they just took me everywhere. And I loved being with them. And Claudia was a nursery school teacher. And neither one of them, I think the whole summer, they didn't speak 2 words of English to me. Mario because he didn't know any, and Claudia because she told me she didn't know English, but she was not quite telling the truth. And so that summer, I spoke French the whole time. And you could see, this is my favorite picture in the whole book, that you could see their incredible focus, their incredible attention that they gave to me. And you could tell with my hands, I'm struggling, you know, I'm speaking, I'm having to say everything in French. And eventually I started dreaming in French. And when I came home, you know, at the end of the summer, I had to relearn English. It was like, I mean, brain wasn't working that way. So, but I just love that picture so much because you could see what they gave to me that summer that has lasted a lifetime. And the reason I have this wedding picture of my dear husband and me is that I told Mario and Claudia about Bob, and I wasn't sure he was the right one for me. I described him, and he was like very silly, but he played the guitar, and you know, he was very, very smart. He went to MIT, and they said, marry him, marry him. So very soon after that trip, I married him, and we've been married for 54 and a half years.
Oh.
So it's quite amazing. They knew. And what I want to show here is that the whole family was involved. Bob and I took our little daughter, Stephanie, that's Bob with Claudia. That's little Stephanie. Stephanie is here tonight. And her daughter, Lilith, I saw. Thank you for being here. You know, this is, the whole family was involved in this. And it was so funny because in the letters, I would see my mother's letters to Claudia. There was a section written by Paul, my father, in French. And then there was a section written by my Aunt Adeline, her sister. Everybody, her sister's boyfriend, Morris, the accountant, had to write French. And in those days, they taught writing so magnificently. My mother wrote much better than I write now. And I still wish I had spoken French more I spoke probably better than she did when I came home from France. But that's Mario and Claudia on one of the trips where we were with them. And at one point, they were not doing well. And I was very worried about them because this was at a time when my parents had gotten very ill and had actually passed away. So I called them one day and I said, I'm going to come to visit you. And this is all in French, of course, rusty French. And they said, oh, you have a business trip that you're coming to France for, right? And then you're going to see us while you're there. I said, no, I'm just coming to see you. And they said, why are you doing that? Because I love you. I miss you. And so I went and I was with them for 5 days. And I brought them the CD, which I learned from one of my mother's letters. The song Stardust was their favorite song, Claudia's and my mother's. So I bought Mario and Claudia a CD of Stardust, and I begged them to dance. And I got sort of a, you know, not a high quality photograph, but it was full of love, and they loved it. They just kept dancing. And so that brings us to the end of the slide presentation. These are my 4 books. I am very proud of all of them. This one has a very personal significance to me. I want to honor my mother and my French mother, as I call her. So that's what this is about. And those of you who are here who don't know me, you will get the sense. I know that quite a few of you have already ordered the book and you're reading it now, or you've already read it. And you'll get a sense of who I don't hide who I am. I just, I speak truthfully and emotionally quite a bit of the time. So you'll see it in the book. It comes out, and sometimes I have to tell myself to, you know, calm down a little, Judy. And I talk to myself in the book. So anyway, that's that part. And Emily, let me turn it over to you for your questions.
Yeah, thanks for giving us a little bit of a summary and a background of that, Judy.
My
Um,
pleasure.
so I read one review of your book, and the reviewer described it as a collection of love letters that weren't about romance, which I thought was such an interesting description. Do you agree with
Was
that?
that
Or
Patricia? Was that Patricia Bunin by any chance? Do you remember? Was it in
oh,
the?
I don't remember which one it was. You sent it to me, and I can't remember offhand.
Yeah.
The
She
author of
wrote a
that.
lovely article in 3 California newspapers,
I think
and
that
it was, yeah, it was amazing. Her writing was awesome. But yeah, so your question was about, are these love letters?
she
Is
thought
that?
that they were love letters that weren't about romance.
Yes,
Do you agree with
yes.
that characterization, or would you describe it differently?
Absolutely. These letters were so full of love and connection. Oh my God. They were always looking for connection throughout their entire relationship. My mother would say, oh, I have a recipe for you. I'm sending it in my next letter. Or no, I'm sending it in this letter. And then, or I loved the recipe you sent me last letter. I tried it out and everybody ate the cake that you gave us the recipe for, or the movies. There's a whole section in the book about films that they had seen, and they disagreed. And they loved Shirley Temple in the beginning, and then like a couple of years later, they didn't like her so much. And Cary Grant they loved right through, but it was connection, and that's love. That is love. And they were indeed soulmates.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's so interesting to explore different kinds of love other than just romance.
Yes.
So the book is centered around, I mean, obviously the correspondence between your mother and your pen pal, but you also figure in quite a lot in terms of telling the story. Who do you think the main character is?
Well, I think the main character is my mother, because we're really seeing her letters and reading her letters. I mean, you will see in the book actual letters, and I'm having, a heated discussion with the US Copyright Office, because I really want those letters protected. And they've been saying, well, she's the author, and then my brother and I had to do an estate document. We had to find her will. but
Wow.
but the letters are precious and critical to the story, to who my mother was and who she is. My daughter Stephanie had this wonderful thought about, she thanked me for writing this book because her daughter Lilith and her son Lucius may have children who have children who have children, and they will all get to know an ancestor of theirs that they never would have known just by reading this book. So thank you, Stephanie, for that. It's really beautiful. And that is what's so precious. And I think an analogy might be the Greek chorus of it. I'm looking at everything and I'm giving my take on, because I don't know what's going to happen next. I would not let myself read through all the letters. I decided that I was going to read one, I wasn't going to read them all at once. I was going to read one at a time and have it be revealed to me what would happen next. I'm not jumping ahead. I'm not jumping around. And that was quite a challenging but very thrilling way to do this project, to write this book also.
Mm-hmm. So you kind of touched on this when you were talking just now, but you really got to know your mother in a different way through reading these letters. Did getting that glimpse into your mother's youth and early adulthood change how you relate to your children? And what sort of legacy you're wanting to leave to them?
That's a really interesting question, because my getting to know my mother in such an intimate way. And no one ever, I mean, I think I may have, I won't say I'm the only one in the world, but I know my mother as a 15-year-old now. I know what she had for breakfast. I know what time she went to bed. I know the clubs she joined at school. I know the names of her pet goldfish. I know, I mean, things that some details are more fascinating than others, but it's still something that is, I mean, I was in awe to be able to read these letters. But you asked me a very interesting, am I going to treat my children? Yeah, I've decided that, well, Anya Berg is here. Anya has been co-facilitating an Artist's Way workshop with me for 6 years. It's about creativity. And thank you, Anya, I call you the midwife to the birth of this book, because I spoke about it for 3 years as I was writing it in the Artist's Way workshop. But we write morning pages where it's like a brain dump. And I've already started tearing up my morning pages so my children won't have them.
But what if Claudia had torn up the letters from your mother? You don't want to do that.
They're very, very different, very different. If you read Julia Cameron's work, she teaches the morning pages are brain dumps, garbage, all the stupid thoughts you have. They don't even have to be in sentences. You're supposed to write in sloppy handwriting. So, they would not be valuable probably anyway. But, I see that you do get to know a lot about a person through letters. Letters are very different. I will take that position.
Yes.
But I want my children and grandchildren to know who I am. And I think through my writing, they do. And it's my legacy to them. I dedicated You're Totally Awesome, the Power of Acknowledgement for Kids, to my then 2-year-old granddaughter, and I want them to know what my values are and what I appreciate in life, about life. And, they are forging their own paths. And I'm very grateful that they're all wonderful people, my family members. But, they'll take what they take and they'll reject what they don't want to take. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Good question, though.
And so, speaking of how you want to curate what you leave to them, you're not going to leave them all your morning doodle. You commented in the book that you described Claudia and Sylvia as soulmates, yet you did notice when reading your mother's letters that she curated that version of herself to her pen pal. You mentioned that, you were so surprised when she didn't mention when she was pregnant with you. And so I was just wondering, how did you kind of come to terms with seeing them on the one hand as being soulmates? And of course, I'm sure you're looking back at the whole 70 years of their relationship, but then being so surprised at the things your mother left out.
Yeah, I think that I think it might have been an extreme sensitivity on her part to Claudia's situation. Claudia did not have a husband at that time. She didn't meet Mario till 1948 after the letters. And she went through a lot of boyfriends. My mother documented her boyfriends and Claudia's boyfriends, and Joe from the US, who was in the military in France. Claudia went out with him, and we thought it was going to be a real union, and they were going to come live back in New York, and it didn't happen. So I think I would guess, and my brother Carl is here. Thank you, Carl, for being here. It's only 4:00 out west, and he's in the middle of a work day. So thank you, I appreciate it. I don't know if you can talk if you want to. what do you think it was about our mother?
Not to put you on the spot, Carl.
Not to put you on the spot, Carl.
Why
You
she
don't
didn't,
have to.
why she didn't mention that she was pregnant with you?
6 months pregnant in the last, she said in that last letter, I'm going to start thinking about having a child, the possibility of having a child. That's what she said.
I don't know. I wish I could. I wish I could answer that.
Me too.
She was very private, although apparently with Claudia she wasn't. I have no idea. Sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. You never know if I just think it was sensitivity, and
Sounds good.
yeah, I know she didn't want Claudia to be jealous of her. They really loved each other.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that surprised me when I was reading through it was your mother's comments about the post-World War II economic difficulties. And she was comparing things in the US and saying, oh, it's really rough here, but I know you guys have it even worse over there. And I found that surprising. I mean, someone obviously rather removed from that generation, but I had always heard of, the post-war period, particularly in the US, as being a time of great economic prosperity. So I was curious if there were any of the historical details that you found surprising when reading through the letters.
Probably all of it. And I will reveal that my mother, when I was in 7th grade, got called into my social studies class to meet with the teacher because the teacher said, Judy doesn't know anything about history. She knows nothing. I want you to have her read a newspaper every day. So that lasted about 2 days. So I've never been drawn to history. Give me fiction, or give me no. No, but fiction is such a visit to another time and a place through, something that doesn't really exist. When it's history, I never read it. But this I did read with interest because she was talking about how they didn't have soap in the United States. They didn't have soap. There were things they didn't have that just surprised me. And she commented on what Claudia had written to her about what they didn't have. And they didn't have a lot more things. But again, for the first time, maybe in my life, history had some appeal and some interest.
Mm-hmm. It's fascinating. So you had mentioned that you still have some boxes of your parents' papers, and there could be a possibility that you might find some letters from Claudia there. If you could, choose, and there would be letters from a particular point in their correspondence, what point would you most want to find?
Ooh, that's a really good question. Well, I'd like to know a little bit more about 1947, the year of my birth. Maybe there were a couple of back and forth letters, because Claudia said she had all of them. She said, I kept all of them. I don't know what I did with them. And, you could say, maybe she didn't want to share those with me. Maybe they were really tucked away in a drawer, or not. But, I think that would be a very, just from a personal curiosity point of view. But the most interesting age, I would say, was probably in her late teens, because she started writing when she was 15 and Claudia was 16. So maybe 18 or 19 would be of real interest.
How come?
What was she doing? Well, she was starting college. She was going to be a teacher. They both ended up as teachers. My mother taught 30 years worth of 3rd grade. And Claudia taught, 30 plus years of nursery school. And they both loved it. And they shared stories about that. They shared about everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there were a lot of intimate details in the letters. It gives quite an intimate look into both of their lives. And I'm curious, what made you decide to share that very personal relationship in such a public form by publishing it in a book?
I felt that it was a tribute to my mother. It would be. And she was always so proud. She was alive when I wrote my first book, The Power of Acknowledgement. She was showing it to everybody. She was so excited. And she wasn't well at the time, but didn't matter. That pride came through. And I think my mother, Carl, I'll call her our mother, Carl, our mother was always a little bit, had a backseat to my father, the dentist, our father, the dentist. That was like the male profession, and male, got the front and center spot. But my mother was so creative and so vivacious and had such a spark about it. That's the mother I discovered. And she was quite ill the last, 4 or 5 years of her life. And that wasn't coming through at all. And that's when I got the letters from Claudia, just, a little bit before. Well, she gave them to me before, but when I started reading them, that's when I saw that spark. And she was such a beautiful person, truly beautiful. And I wanted the world to know her.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned how proud she was of your first book, which was on, so you've written things in other books on leadership and project management. So this is a totally different sort of book. How was the writing experience different, or maybe similar?
Well, I have to say, giving birth to a child is much easier than giving birth to a book. Much easier.
Books have sharper edges.
Wait, what? Sorry?
Books have sharper corners.
That's cute. Yes, and you're never finished. The book is never ready. Ask my friends, ask my family, how many versions of this book? Don't ask my book designer, because at one point
your book designer is here, and she knows how it's never done. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yes, Maria,
this book took longer than my children.
Much longer, and mine
Yes.
too.
Yes.
Yes, but Maria, we won't tell them about the time you wrote that you wanted to hit me for changing it again. I was on mute, right?
Don't forget we're recording this session.
That was supposed to. It was said with love, Judy. All
Yes,
love.
I know. And you know what it is? I want to share the artistic process. This is, people think, you sit down, you work for a couple of months, you write a book, that's it. But it doesn't happen that way. And those of you who have written books, I think there are probably a few people here who have. It's really hard. And there's this great quote by Winston Churchill about writing. He said, writing a book is like, it's like, first it's like a mistress. And then, you just can't wait to be with it. You want to go to it all the time. And then it becomes more like a monster. And finally, you just throw it to the public because you've had it with that monster. I mean, it's much better said than what I recreated, but still, look it up. It's Winston Churchill about writing a book. Brilliant. And it is so accurate that we really, we have to admire and respect the artistic process and what an author goes through. Every time I hear of somebody writing a book, it's like part of me goes, oh, you poor thing. And the other is, good for you. The world will know who you are and what your mission is and what you see. So that's it. Ellen Galinsky, Ellen has written, what, 100 books? If you wanted to say a few words about the artistic process of writing a book. Anyway, she's an amazing person, Ellen Galinsky, and families and work have been a major part of what she's written about. But anyway, that's very hard and very worthwhile. And, you know, I'm very excited because my daughter Stephanie's book is going to be next by Handler and Wagrash Publishing. And then my husband Bob's book for technically challenged adults, Excel for preschoolers. He wrote that for me. It's still above my head. And dear friend Jerry Golden, America's Welcome, beautiful children's book. So, you know, we've got our books lined up, and I'll be tortured by each one of them. Thank you.
So you had mentioned just a little bit there about the design of the book, and I know when you first showed it to me, I was really struck by how beautiful the layout and the pictures were, and how just what a lovely visual piece of art it was. Can you tell us a little bit about how it came to be in that form?
Well, I was in love with the letters. I was truly in love with the letters. And I knew that they, as I wrote about them, they had to be there. I wanted people to see my mother's handwriting. I wanted them to look at her beautiful construction of phrases in French. And let me just say that Matthias Charinat is here today, and he's going to be translating. He's working on it now. He's translating the book into French, which is the language it really needs to be in. So thank you, Matthias, for taking that on. So it's just, you know, it's so important to have the visuals support what you're trying to communicate. So if you can't see those letters and see how beautifully my mother writes French, like quoting it, it just won't do it, you know? And Marie came up with a very interesting, my mother's words that I quote are in purple, and the rest is, you know, the rest of the letters are black. So, and everything is a part of it. I want their photos to be part of it. That's very important to me. Claudia and my mother. And there are a lot of other photos that I did not show today. And they're just beautiful human beings, both of them. And I'm so lucky. I feel so grateful to have had my mother raise her hand and Claudia raise her hand. And look what she created, a lifetime legacy for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if we should let some people ask questions, because wow, it's going fan. Now, your questions are great. You know what, Emily, you and I are gonna have to do a 2-hour session somewhere.
I'll wrap up my portion with one last question, and then we'll let the audience chime in. But what do you hope that people will take away from this story?
Oh, wow. What I'm seeing is, I mean, I'm getting stories back. And in fact, Julia, I don't want to embarrass you, so you don't have to talk, but Julia came to a book signing I did at the Dimmock Library in Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania, where Bob and I stay a lot of the time now. And Julia is, I think, 15 years old, and she is just wild about the French language. And we were just, you know, she and I were soulmates in that conversation, because they didn't have the French language in her school, and she fought for it. And there was not any French in her family, it was not her lineage or anything like that, but she just had a passion for French. And she, I hope you don't mind my telling your story, Julia, but it was magnificent how she fought for it until the school, she went to a council meeting and presented why it was so important. And she's going to France, and other people are telling me their stories. I don't know if everybody is here, but really they're connecting with this story in ways that are just touch me so deeply. And they're remembering letters that they have stashed away from their great grandmother. And that, people are starting, I want them to treasure these connections to their past the way I have come to treasure mine.
It's beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. Okay, so I've done enough talking. Who else has some questions that they would like to ask Judy? You are welcome to unmute and ask, or if you want to throw it in the chat, I can read.
I have a thought. Can you hear me?
Go right ahead.
Okay.
Kaylee.
Oh, hi, Kaylee.
Hi. I thought you might like to share how you and Jared came to visit the folks in Paris from your trip to Paris. Because Jared had a lot to do with that.
What?
Because Jared had a lot to do with your visiting them. I thought you might like to share Jared's part about that.
Yeah, that's a great question, Kaylee. I wanted to give we've been through a challenging time as a family, and I wanted to give my son a special trip. And I was talking to my friend Kaylee about this, and she said, well, just ask him where he wants to go. And I said, oh no, he's going to tell me France. I know he's going to tell me France, and Bob can't go, and I'd have to go alone. And right now money is a challenge. She said, just ask him anyway. So I did, and he said, I want to go to France. I want to go to Paris. And then I want to see where you lived when you were 18 years old. I want to meet Mario and Claudia. And it was so beautiful because Jared, let's see, Jared, are you there? I'm not, yes, he's here. I know you're there, but I mean, can we see your face?
I don't have a camera, but hello.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for being here. Yeah, Jared's wanting to go to France, and above all, to meet with Mario and Claudia. Now, we went to Paris first, and I'll never forget, we ate at au pied du cochon. What was it, cochon? Cochon? Cochon. At the foot of the pig. And they had French onion soup that was literally, you needed to cut it with a knife. The cheese was so thick. And so Jared wanted to go to Paris, and we sat with Mario and Claudia. Mario didn't speak a word of English. Jared didn't speak more than 2 words of French. And somehow it was a wonderful time. It was so wonderful that after we said goodbye, I said to Jared, where do you want to go on your last day? We had 1 day left in France. He said, I want to go see where you lived. I want to go to Lyon. We had to take this train from Paris to Lyon. I said, you could go to Disney Paris. He said, nope. I want to go to Lyon. I want to see where you lived, and I want to meet them again. I want to see them in their apartment. It was so beautiful. And that's when she gave me the letters. So thank you, Jared. That was amazing. That was an amazing gift. I would always have had a wonderful relationship, but I wouldn't have had the documentation of it all through these letters. So that is priceless. Thank you, Kaylee.
You're welcome. I've also just remembered so much how he chose for you to be reunited with that family over his going to his Disney World or whatever it was. And you thought he was going to choose Disney World, and it was with such love that he chose to give you what he was able to give you.
Hey, Kaylee.
Hi, Jared.
Hi.
I love you.
Love you too.
Thank you.
Is there anybody who has read the book that didn't know me before you read the book? I would love to hear from someone like that also. I mean, I know and love a lot of people here, but not everybody. And I'm just trying to see if I. Well, Rich Rockman, we know each other a little bit, but I know you got the book recently, and I know how impressed you were with the design of it. And I'm not sure you've actually finished the book. Have you? I can't remember.
Let me make myself visible here. I did not finish it because it was not that long ago that I received it, but I have begun it, and I've read enough to know how beautiful you've written. I did say earlier to you that I just thought the book design was tremendous, but your writing is just as beautiful as the way it was presented. So it's a perfect complement of style and substance.
Oh,
And
thank you.
you know, they really reflect and complement each other. So I'm really looking forward to finishing it. You've already given us teasers on what to expect, but I know it's going to be fulfilling because I just loved what I've read so far.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Now I'll make
Hey,
myself
Judy.
disappear again.
Who was that?
Hi, Judy. It's Karen. Can you hear me?
Oh, Karen, hi. Yeah, somehow I'm not seeing.
Hi, how are you? Hello, everybody.
Oh, Karen,
I just wanted
wow.
to say I truly enjoyed every page of your book.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And, you know,
Can
I
you
know
hear me
you,
okay?
yeah, you sound great. And I know you have a great appreciation of family and family treasures and, you know, the things people leave behind. I know that for a fact. So
I have to say every single page, I hung on to every word, and I really hope you find the other letters and that you're able to write another book, because I'll be looking forward to hearing about it.
oh, thank you. I would love to. And I promise if I find them, there will be a sequel. This
You
is
know,
recorded.
There's something to
being
be
recorded.
said about seeing life in hindsight. And that's something that I hope many people read this book and realize the treasures that are right before us sometimes, and we don't find them until much later. You know, like how you described your mom was into politics, yet you wouldn't have known from, you know, maybe sitting down trying to do social studies homework with her. I find that so interesting because, you know, unless we do engage and we do ask these questions, how would we ever know, right?
And, you know, frankly, I felt I was a lot more interesting than my mother was as I grew up. And she
We all do.
validated that.
We all do.
I mean, it's terrible. If I could have those moments now to ask, I mean, I had no idea she was into boxing. She used to listen to boxing matches on the radio. She wouldn't watch them on black and white TV because it was too violent, but she would listen to them on there. She loved Sonny Liston, and there were a couple of others. Our mother was never interested in what?
Joe Louis.
Joe Louis, the boxer? Yes, you're right. The boxer, Joe Louis. Whoever heard of Joe Louis?
And to think she went to 2 Yankee games too.
Yes, yes. That's it. So she apparently loved sports, and I had no idea. So we have such a, I don't know, a two-dimensional picture of our parents. It's almost like they should all come with their childhood letters so we can read them, you know? That's how they.
Beautiful thought.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hey, Judy, how are you doing? It's Jim Trella.
Jim Trella, thank you for coming. Jim and I go back a long way through work and
Through fun.
and fun, a lot of fun, yes.
So I had Mary Lou alongside next to me. That's my wife. And
lovely.
she was listening to the stories you were talking about. She said, I have to buy this book. So she went out and bought it right now.
Oh my gosh.
We are so excited about getting it and reading
Thank
it.
you.
That'll be fun. Good to see you, Bob. I'm glad you're out there too. Yep.
Thank you.
But anyway, just wanted to say thank you so much for putting this together. I was very happy to get the invitation and to be able to sit in and listen to the story. You've mentioned it before, but this is the first time I've been able to actually hear it in person. So thank you very much for sharing that with us.
Thanks for your always ongoing support. And, you know, this may be a side of Judith W. Umlas you may not have known exactly. So I'm honored to have you here.
But it does not surprise me. I'll tell you that from what I know about you.
Oh, okay. Maybe I take a little bit after my mother, except for those boxing. No boxing.
So,
Judy, I have a brief question. I'm fascinated by the whole book, but I may have missed this early on. Did your mother ever meet her pen pal in person?
Oh, yes. Thank you for asking that. I came first. I met her first in 1965, and they'd been writing since 1936. So, Bob, how many years is that?
29.
29. Good. He's the mathematician of the family. Anyways, so I was there in 65, and in about 1970, 71, Mario and Claudia came to the United States for the first time, and they met my parents, and that was like a reunion, especially between Claudia and my mother. And in fact, Bob's parents gave them their Queens apartment for 2 months because they went up to the country for the summer in Massachusetts. So Mario and Claudia had a 2-month trip. Bob and I took them camping. We got together with my parents quite a bit. And after that, my parents went to France. And after that, you know, it was just back and forth, ongoing, you know, whenever possible. So that was a great question. Thank you. Is that Carol?
Yeah.
I can't see who's talking for some reason. But anyway, you tell me.
It is Carol, yes.
Thank you, Carol.
Hi, Judy.
Thanks for being here.
and so this is Jerry.
Hey, Jerry.
And hi. So I just ordered a copy for a dear friend as a gift.
Oh,
And, I think it's going to be one greatly appreciated gift. And your whole process of writing this book has been very inspiring. And as you know, it inspired me to a poem. And then I was delighted that the poem was translated into French already.
yes.
And when I saw the French, I thought, wow, that's a good poem, much better than so anyway, that's lovely. And thanks, Judy, for the inspiration of this book. And I do think having this kind of a memoir that is not just your memoir, but a memoir from history is wonderful. And what always struck me was when you first started talking about this correspondence was through the war years. And, you know, I mean, I'm very aware of those years as war years because, you know, I learned about them from people in my family to some extent, but, you know, never got that personal window on what life was like. And I think that's amazing that they kept that correspondence during that time, and probably meant an awful lot to both of them.
Yeah, I think it did. And the first letter after the war, because for 5 years they were separated. They could not write to each other. And I don't know if that was because of airmail or what, but they couldn't. And so my mother got 3 letters from Claudia all at once. And she was so thrilled.
Yeah,
But,
I heard it said that in those times, we couldn't do a lot of things, but everything we could do was important and really mattered. And now we can do anything we want, and most of what we do isn't important and doesn't really matter. So it really brings you to an appreciation of the everyday and how important that is when every day can't be taken for granted.
And you bring up an interesting point, because what I really treasure about the letters is that they're handwritten. And I can see my mother's hand. I can feel her personality. I mean, it still comes through so clearly to me when I view them each time. And that's why, you know, from the photographs on the cover to the letters, you know, I mean, I feel my two mothers. And the handwritten letters, I know every once in a while, it's rare, very rare, I get a handwritten acknowledgement or thank you note from somebody. And I save practically every one of them, because it's like, it's so special. It's not an email. Emails can be great and you can communicate a lot in them, but it's just not the same. So, you know, I hope this also starts a trend where people will value and appreciate writing a note to somebody, writing a letter. Do we have time for one more question?
Go right
Emily?
ahead. Yeah. Anyone else have any questions or thoughts they want to share? I think you've stunned them all.
Were they the same
Well
age?
done.
That,
Were they the same age?
oh, that's a good question. Is that Lilith? Was that Lilith? I think it was.
Yeah.
No, they were 1 year apart. Sylvia was 15 and Claudia was 16, but they were really right in sync with each other. You know, everything they did followed the same path. You know, when they went to their first movie by themselves, when they, you know, they did all these things. It was as though they were the same age. Great question.
I have a question, Judy. It's Ronnie. Hi.
Oh, hi, Ronnie.
Hi. Can you tell us a little bit about the final letters? Or is that giving away too much?
Well, the final letters, remember, I only have 1936 to 1947, and the letters went on until 2004 or something in that neighborhood. So I don't have the real later letters, but in this group of letters, yeah, the big question, you know, was about, you know, my mother talking about thinking of having a child, and she's pregnant with me, 6 months. But there were some other things as well that were a bit surprising. You know, she kept talking about certain Christian holidays and never any Jewish holidays. And I wondered if that was something she felt, because there was at that time, especially after the war and during the war, terrible, you know, a situation for Jewish people. So I think she might have been a little leery about that. I don't know, but those were some of the things that came out, or at least surfaced for me in the later years. But yeah, I think, you know, you'd have to read about them. I don't have every letter that they wrote in the book, but that's kind of an interesting thought. Maybe someday I'll put them on, you know, a file and people can access them.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for coming. And I really want to thank all of you for coming. This has just been so amazing to have people I know, I don't know, people who've read the book, people who have not read the book. And yet I think you all got a sense of who my mother was and is and lives as in my life, and now in the life of many other people. She is worth remembering.